Well, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this proposals webinar. As everyone gets settled in, I'm just going to go over a few reminders before we get started.
And as you're filtering into the room, just say what firm size you're with, what firm, what part of California you're at. Just keep the chat going for comments, add comments during the webinar, and let's make this as interactive we can on a webinar presentation.
Absolutely. Well, please use the Q&A section for any questions today, and remember to be constructive in those questions and comments to the presenter and to one another to ensure that we have a session that is productive. AI California will submit one AI learning unit for those who complete the session live. And as always, the webinar content and additional resources will be available online shortly after this session. Today's webinar which will explore how critical the proposal is to the client onboarding process, is brought to you by BQE. As I said before, this qualifies for one AIA learning unit for those watching live. AIA California will report this once you have finished the session in full. Please allow up to 10 business days for credits to be posted to your transcript. Now, I would quickly like to introduce our presenter. Douglas Teeger, FAIA, graduated from Cornell University in 1982 with a bachelor's in architecture. He opened his own firm in 1989 and grew from a solo practitioner to be a managing partner of a 32-person firm. In 2019, Douglas received a master's in spiritual psychology from USM, where he learned the tools and skills he is sharing with his staff and clients. His ability to effectively streamline the operations allows for more time to be spent on design and project research, while creating a culture that fosters a holistic approach to work-life balance. In 2017, he served as the president of AIA Los Angeles chapter and previously served on the AIA National Strategic Council. In 2019, Douglas transitioned out of his firm, elevating 3 associates to partners, sold all of his shares, started his next venture, Teeger Consulting. Douglas' mission is to live an aspiring, balanced life, whether it involves family, coaching, consulting, painting, or sports. Now, on to today's presentation. Welcome, Douglas, and thank you for being here today. Please, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Let me move some things around. I have to switch screens. Yes, here. Great. So can you confirm you can see the presentation screen?
Yep, you're good to
Awesome.
go.
Okay, I'm going to stop video for the presentation so I can focus, and then I'll come back on for the Q&A. Once again, Ashley, thank you, and want to thank the staff at BQE Core for making these webinars possible for all of you. To keep the intro even shorter, you can just go to my website to read about my background and personal journey. As Ashley said, I've been managing partner for 20 years, developing best practices, and now I'm consulting and sharing this information, assisting firms to increase profitability and improve firm culture. I'd like to say we're partnering together to make a difference through defining and achieving your both business and personal goals. So there are so many great books and resources available for running a firm and your life. I think it's important to constantly learn and try new things. Life is just one big experiment. If something is working, keep it. If it's not working, let's try something new. If the only way you're going to make a change is if you change something. So one of the books I always recommend is Traction. It'll be here every time, as this book is foundational. I'll continue to recommend it. This book can bring value to each of your firms, guaranteed. The course outline for these 12 webinars is really a roadmap to help you develop some of the processes discussed in Traction. The following is not a book, but a proposal consultant. So Ian Motley provides fee proposal solutions for architects and design professionals. He has an amazing workshop to help you improve your proposal process. And the AIA has a lot of information on contracts on their website at aia.org or direct at the aiacontracts.org. So while this is a 12-part series, today we're on proposals. All these 12 processes integrate. So for example, my time management really ties into how you write a proposal. Understanding fees and hours ties into how you write a proposal. So you really have to take this as a one piece of the puzzle. Today, we're going to discuss going through the outline shown here. We're going to look at types of proposals, what's included in a proposal, proposals versus contracts. We'll go over terms and conditions, then the AIA agreements, and the importance of linking your proposal to your project setup in whatever firm management software you're using. So you've heard me say this in the past. I'll continue throughout all these webinars to share the importance of creating systems and processes for all your workflows. There is never a one-size-fits-all for most proposal systems, and I'm a believer in creating as detailed a template as possible that works for your office. Using that as a starting point will shorten the time and effort in putting proposals together. I recommend a template for each project sector. For example, if your firm does primarily single-family residential projects, you might have a template for new residential projects, one for remodels and additions, and one for small remodels. The downside to having multiple proposal templates is that if you refine and change the template, that information typically will carry over all your project sectors. Therefore, create the minimum number of templates that will support you in the most efficient workflow. For most offices, having 3 or 4 templates is appropriate. As shown here, single-family dwellings, multifamily, commercial, and tenant improvement proposals could be different enough that you'll be saving time even if you have to update 4 templates when you develop a new clause. In addition, I recommend a 1-page hourly agreement that you can send to any client wanting to get it started immediately on a very specific and limited scope of work, such as pre-design or a feasibility service. Each of the proposal templates can reference a terms and conditions exhibit. The terms and conditions is a single document that can apply to all proposal types and can be attached as an Exhibit A. Then, whenever something unique occurs during the life of the project, where I might say, hey, that should have been in my contract, I go back and add it to each of the proposal templates or to the terms and conditions exhibit. So your proposal should have the following: a cover letter that allows you to easily customize and personalize to your specific client and their requirements. The scope should be clearly defined with as much detail as possible. A description of services by phase, which can link back to your activity list in your timekeeping system. A list of deliverables for each phase that allows you to have clear acknowledgement when your services for each phase are complete. A clear list of deliverables also prevents scope creep for what you're obligated to provide. An estimated schedule for each phase that should be discussed with the client. Potential items that can delay the schedule should be discussed ahead of time. This might include planning approval or entitlement approval, client review during the design process, consultants that are out of your direct control, working with utility companies that are required to provide hookups. Whatever you have learned over time that can cause a delay outside of your control can and should be discussed in a light manner with the client, not to instill fear, but to educate the client about realistic schedule expectations. Also, any exclusions should be discussed in the proposal. Compensation should be clearly outlined, and we'll talk about other clauses that might be more appropriate for either the proposal or the general conditions. And of course, signatures by both you and the client. So, how do we create a better proposal? As I mentioned, Ian Motley, a friend and fellow consultant, has spent his life researching and analyzing architectural proposals. He spent 4 years honing his skills at Norman Foster's as their proposal writer, and then left to start his own company, helping architects and other design professionals write better proposals. He offers a proposal workshop that I recommend to all my clients. He states that the traditional proposals are not working for the majority of firms because they take too much time to go from the initial phone call to signing the proposal. Usually, this process also forces a race to the bottom in negotiations. Let me explain. For example, most firm owners receive a call from a client who asks them to come to the site. They get all excited that a client is calling them, and of course they're willing to go meet them at the site. They go to the site where the owner peppers them with all types of questions and asks them for their ideas about the project. Then the owner would say, hey, can you put together a proposal? You go back to your office, put a proposal together from just a 1 hour or 2 hour site visit, not really knowing who this client is, what are their expectations, and what they want versus what their actual budget is. You come up with a lump sum fee, send off the proposal. The client says, thank you. They say they met with a few architects, and while they like you the best, the other fees are lower. Could you review your proposal and come back with a lower fee? So now you spend more time reviewing the fee and working on the proposal and send off a revised proposal with a lower fee. Then they say, hey, I want to work with you, but can we just meet and go over your proposal? So you spend time in another meeting where they negotiate again for either scope increase or fee decrease. And once again, you must modify the proposal. You spend time, send it back, and hopefully it is signed. I've been in this trap early in my career, and there is a better way. The exception is if you're an established firm with a strong brand and a stellar reputation, you might not have to go through this process. You can have the client come to your office for the first meeting. You can negotiate from a place of power, simply stating, this is our process, and this is our proposal, and this is our fee. But this is not the case for everyone, and I'm speaking more to those other people. For over 10 years, hold on one sec, sorry. For over 10 years, Ian has been studying the psychology of the buyer's mindset and has learned it is not what you are charging, but how you are charging. And selling is all about presenting options. When a client meets with multiple architects and receives 3 or 4 different proposals, that they have 3 or 4 different lump sum amounts, which usually vary widely, the client asks the question, why should I pay more? They use this as an opportunity to take the lowest fee back to the architect, maybe with the highest fee, who they might like the most and might be the most qualified, and then ask them to lower their fee. Most architects are still presenting a single lump sum fee. They might break it down by percentages, but it's still a lump sum fee. What if your proposal provides 3 fee options with various levels of service that you include in each of these options? For those of you already doing that, great, but I'm going to walk through it. This is no different than what most software companies use today when you pay for the features you want. In this example, the lowest priced architect might be providing only a permit set of drawings, while the highest priced architect is providing a full service with exceptional client handholding from start to finish. If your proposal can clearly lay out what a permit set costs, for example, a permit set with these options costs X, if we add other options, it's Y, and adding more options, it's Z. You are now providing options at a different price point and allowing the client to choose which option they want. Hopefully, with these 3 price points in your proposal, on the low end will be close to the low fee of other firms, and your high end will be in line with other high-end firms. The client is informed and educated about what services are included and can therefore make an informed decision. You as the architect do not have to go and renegotiate with yourself to come back to the client with a lower fee. You have clearly shown 3 fees with an increasing level of service. So a twist on this system is breaking out your service and letting the owner select which ones they want. Quite often the owner will come back after signing your agreement and acknowledging the importance of your value and importance of your services, and then ask for those additional services as well. This brings us to a new alternative approach to proposals. This approach, once again, is mainly for firms that are not well established, cannot dictate the terms of the proposal, or are not willing to walk away from a project. One thought is, what if you can be paid to write the proposal and earn the trust of the client at the same time? For most projects, the scope and construction budget is not known on day 1 of the project. There's a funny analogy here. I think it started with Enoch Sears or another consultant in the industry. A man and a woman are on their first date. They go to a restaurant. The man leads across the table after the main course is cleared and says, "Let's get married," before dessert is even served. This is basically how the architectural industry has treated clients and written proposals. The architect meets the client for 1 or 2 hours. They come back to write a contract for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars or more, without even going through the dating process. How can we break this down into smaller, more manageable steps to develop a relationship and trust between you and the client? So how about we create a pre-design or small hourly consulting agreement just to get the project going? So for a new home or a remodel, this might play out and sound like this. Mr. and Mrs. Client, I know how important this project is to you, and there are so many unknowns at the beginning of the project. Why don't we just start out on a small hourly agreement that'll allow me to do some research for your project and prepare a report for your use? Whether you ultimately use me or not, this information will be critical for you to start your project with any firm. I'll prepare a summary of findings of the local zoning codes, which will show you the required front yard, rear yard, side yard setbacks, height limits, parking, etc. So a little aside. As the local architect, you need to know the basic information you can easily provide. In Los Angeles, the ZEMIS report makes it very easy to get this information. Going back to talking to the client. We'll work together and come up with a program that defines each of the room sizes and the overall square footage of the house. In addition, we'll discuss a rough order of magnitude of construction costs after a discussion with you on the quality of materials, finishes, the type of lighting and appliances you're expecting. This cost will be arranged just using a cost per square foot based on similar projects. I could provide a concept site plan so you can see how the house fits on the site. Once again, this is not a design exercise. You're not providing floor plans or elevations, and you have to let the client know that this is a pre-design planning exercise. And then you would finish, based on my experience, this takes approximately 15 to 30 hours, whatever it is for you. I'm not telling you to use this word for word. I'm just giving you the concept. This take approximately 15 to 30 hours. We'll include 2 meetings. The first is to go through my interview process with you and then follow up with a meeting to review our findings. So you need to know how many hours this takes for you. And then you would finish with, if it sounds like a good first step, I can send over a 1-page hourly agreement. Once you start doing this and have some great examples of what this report looks like, you can have a better understanding of what it actually costs you to provide these services. It's always good to have an example of what the client's going to receive to make sure you're meeting their expectations. And you'll show them a typical pre-design template to know what they're getting. So make sure you clean up any example sets so they don't have previous client names or addresses in the package. Make it generic. In the future, this will become a template that will allow you to more effectively and efficiently provide this information, and will have your employees who can eventually do it have a template to go by. So this is the honeymoon phase with the client. Your goal during this time with the client is to build trust, have them value your professional expertise, and most importantly, to have them fall in love with your process that allows them to see what it would be like to work with you for the next 1 to 3 years. Hence, you're getting paid to write your proposal. So I hope that sounds like something, if you're not currently doing it, that you might want to try to do. So in this example of a template proposal, I try to have the parts of the proposal that can change in red, so it's easy to see what has to change. We all start with a cover letter, project description, and scope. What I'm offering is to shift the next part, how the phases are described. Traditionally, as shown on the left, I had a proposal that read something like this. Under each of the phases, it would say the architect will, and then I would describe what we would do. This is based on the AIA contract. This came from how the AIA developed their agreements, shown on the right. And most architects follow this format when they created their own proposals. I have since revised this to having the proposal tie into the time tracking system I created that we talked about in our first webinar. And the phase description can now look something like this. In this proposal, we define the 4 big buckets of time. What are we doing for meetings, design effort, project management, and then production of deliverables? And this is consistent for every phase. This makes it easy for the client to understand where your time is going and allows your project manager to understand when work is out of scope. So if you haven't seen my time management tracking system, go to that or try to find that video. It's on the BQE core site, but it's critical that these two tie together. So going back to the first webinar, time tracking, we discussed the system of buckets. I'll do a little review here. We get to follow the logic of our time tracking being linked to our proposals. This allows your PM and team to understand what is in scope or out of scope, and when it's appropriate to discuss and prepare an additional service for your client. So people might say, Doug, you're such a numbers person. You don't understand this client or project. Okay, I agree. And the point is, it's not always about money or profit, but the primary objective is always a happy client. And sometimes asking for an additional service is not the right decision for any number of reasons. I like to say great design, great construction documents, and great construction administration typically leads to a satisfied client. And a client referral is the most effective and cost-effective marketing value. In addition, creating an office culture where creativity thrives, teamwork is a given, communication is transparent, learning from our mistakes is supported, and by the way, we do great work with happy clients, will allow your firm to attract and retain top talent. By using this system of time tracking, you will have better data for what the ideal fee for your project should be. This same format carries through each of the other phases of the project. Whether it's construction documents, it's always how many meetings are we estimating, what's the design effort, what's the project management effort during this phase, and then what is the production of deliverables. Notice in the permit phase, I separate what the architect does from what a permit expediter can do or what you could do for a fee. Separating out the costs is the easiest way to show the value of your service you are providing. This applies to as-built, lighting design, closet interiors, permit expediting, list goes on. Pending the level of client you're working with, it's sometimes more advantageous to have a lower fee and exclude these items. Then get quotes from outside consultants, from the lighting, as-built, closet, etc. If you can do these services for less, explain that to the owner. But please, and here I'm in permits, I'm using expediter as an example. Get a quote from an expediter. If you want to go with that, fine. But please do not just give this away because you're a nice person. For high net worth clients, this approach is not necessarily the best approach. Often a single lump sum where everything in it is included is the best approach. So only you know what is best for your clients. I'm not telling you what to do, just providing tools to help you understand options available and for you to make better choices. I work with my clients in shifting from a right-wrong mindset to a choices and consequences mindset. Have a scientist mindset, experiment, and see what works best. If it's working, keep it. If not, something needs to change, and let's experiment to see what's right for you and your firm. Everyone sells differently. Everyone has a different approach. You have to discover what's working. If it's working, great. If not, do something different. So continuing, bidding, permits, and CA will use different buckets according to the phase, but the format is consistent. I have stipulations in the compensation section that further defines and explains what is in or out of the fee. For example, here, item 3 limits bidding to 3 contractors bidding at the same time. I once, had a client, we went out for 3 separate rounds of bidding, 3 contractors each round, 9 separate contractors. I burned some bridges, learned to add clauses from lessons learned to my proposal. Also, be aware, having information only one place. So simplify, simplify, simplify. Go through your proposals and your terms of conditions and only show information once. Having a clear list of exclusions. This is for you to define, but some we always had are variances or review boards over and above a standard building permit, as-built unless you're getting paid for providing this service. We started outsourcing to save revenue and resources as we cannot meet the price of some of the as-built companies that are out there. Consultants. If you're a small or medium firm, try to have these contracted and paid direct by the owner, or charge a markup of 10 to 15%. There is a real hard cost for your firm. So did you know your E&O insurance includes a premium if you have consultants under your umbrella? And there's admin time to manage and pay the consultants. We also separate out interior design services and clarified what they did versus what we provided. So for example, we would show a wood floor or stone floor, but we consider the shopping and specifying of the materials as part of the interior scope of work. There's nothing wrong with you doing this work. Just get paid for it if you do it, and do not just include these other services in your scope. That's the difference of a lower priced architect that might give a low fee. They're not doing the service that you just think everyone does. Don't stop that. Be very clear on what you're including and not including. So excluding permit fees, or if you do, include a markup if you pay for them. You are not the private banker for this client. Drawing revisions requested by agencies beyond building and safety revisions. So during planning review, if you have to go in front of an HOA board, that type of work, I try to do hourly and let the client know it's discretionary. Lead certifications, I like to do as an additional service, or I don't call it an additional service, it's excluded. If the client wants it, you can do it and present a fee for it. And then renderings. So with today's technology, we included screen grabs as part of our standard fee, but edited, photoshopped renderings, we typically started to outsource or charge on a per image basis. Once again, a lot of this takes time. You have the technology to do it. You want to do it. I have found that most creatives are people pleasers, and you just want to please your client, but stop giving it away. Just define it in your proposal of what's in, what's out, and then offer to the client once the client sees your value. Oh, sure, we can do that. It's about 10 hours, but we'd love to do it for you. So there are two options for presenting the fee based on the client. Once again, for clients that are shopping you around and might be getting costs from non-architect drafter type firms, the option A showing the breakdown is appropriate. For high net worth clients or established firms having a reputation that can justify a lump sum fee, option B might be preferred. This gives you the opportunity to experiment and see what works best for your company. If a process is working, keep it and improve it. If a process is not working, let's try something different. Life is a constant learning opportunity for growth. So C, point 2, is listing any assumptions the fee is based on. Remember to only show information once and in the appropriate section. Section fee is related to fees. So CA must be defined and limited if it's not hourly. This phase is a wild card pending the contractor. With so many factors outside your control, push for hourly CA, or be very specific to what is included in your fee. How many months of construction, number of site meetings, number of reviews, and limitations or substitutions if you're locking into a lump sum fee. Other clauses, including defining your billing schedule. So here, I recommend billing on a work earned basis. Milestone billing is very hard to track profitability on a month to month. It also can leave you vulnerable to projects that are put on hold or delayed. So billing monthly on a work earned basis. This is the only way to accurately track project profitability on an accrual basis on a monthly basis. How much did you invoice in a month? And how much did that labor cost you in that same month? The difference between your labor cost and what you invoice for that labor is your profit or loss. We'll talk about this more in a future webinar on KPIs, but understanding your cost rate is critical. And then reimbursables. I always separate project expenses from consultant expenses. These are also separated on the invoice. Then another clause, changes made to the design after previous owner approval and changes made during the design development, construction document, permitting, bidding, value engineering, and construction administration phases caused by the owner or construction manager. Let them know that if they're going to make changes after the schematic design phase, that impacts the time it takes you to do these drawings. However you write this clause, make sure you capture changes caused by VE somewhere in your agreement. This always comes back to bite so many firms. Additional services will be in writing, list your hourly rates, and then I added a clause that's caught me a few times, stamp only after payment. That's your really only leverage. There are some cities where you have to stamp the drawings during the plan check submittal, but a lot of jurisdictions, you can stamp them after you've received the RTI. And that's one of the last things you can do. That's virtually your only leverage other than filing a lien. In Los Angeles, there is an RTI ready to issue process. It reflects the plans and approval are ready, pending signature and payment. So you can tell the client, hey, plans are ready, need payment brought to date, I'll sign the drawings. So this is one way to make sure you're paid to date with some slow paying clients. If you have a clause in the contract, it doesn't mean you have to act on it, but it is in there to protect you. Lastly, retainers. This comes up all the time with clients. Please always get a retainer and hold this for the duration of the project. A retainer is not your first payment. A retainer allows you to be protected that if the project stops, if the client is a slow payer, you should be able to at least capture 1 month's work or at least a couple weeks' work. Project costs. So while we can use our experience as architects to determine a rough order of magnitude of costs, I like to educate the client that there are factors outside our control related to project costs. If a client wants the estimate of costs, we should bring in a contractor or cost estimator to provide this service. This is very different than the AIA agreements, and you must modify those agreements if you decide to use them and have this clause in your proposal. The AIA agreement states the architect is responsible for construction costs. So I think this stems from more boilerplate buildings, not prototype buildings. Most single-family residential is prototype, but if you're doing track housing, okay, track housing, you've built it 100 times, you know what it'll cost. Tilt-up construction, you've done it 100 times, you know what it'll cost. But custom residential, custom restaurants, retail, that's very hard to tell what the cost is going to be because there's so many variables. So I recommend a clause that reads something like this. Architect is not stating the actual cost of the project. Architect is not responsible for the cost of the project. The owner is aware of the challenges in designing a unique project that makes it difficult to predetermine an exact construction budget. The owner understands that the architect is not a cost estimator or contractor and does not have a cost estimators or contractors experience with factors such as, and et cetera, et cetera. I think the AIA, as I mentioned before, the AIA clause applies to project types that are not unique custom prototypes, or encourages a cost estimator to be part of the project team. But this is not the case with small firms. And then a permitting clause that defines the challenges of working with cities. If this does not apply in your city, then take it out. In general, you must decide what to include or not in your agreement, and do not, I have a proposal template on my website. Big caveat, do not blindly copy and paste these clauses. Make them your own. Some language could include, owner understands that zoning codes and building codes are constantly changing. Architect does not guarantee that verbal direction given during preliminary reviews and/or conceptual discussions with regulatory agencies can be interpreted as binding approvals and will remain intact during the final building plan check stages. Architect does not guarantee that any portion of the submittal that receives approval from one agency will receive approvals from other agencies. This has happened so many times for me in LA. Architect shall not be held responsible for any delays or design revisions required by any of the agencies involved in the review and approval of the project. All revisions to the design that follow the zoning and building codes due to unjustified and/or capricious interpretations by the planning department shall be billed as additional services under the terms of this agreement. So once again, use your experience. If you've run into issues with the city, then adapt them into a language that might protect you for future clients and future proposals. Some clauses like publicity can either be in the proposal or in the general conditions. On the whole, I like to have as many of these clauses that are general to be in the general conditions. Then an acceptance states that this agreement, along with an AIA agreement, such as the B105 or 101, pending project, or you could just include your terms and conditions, and then this can be the basis for a contract. And last, state the length of time this proposal is valid. So proposals versus contracts, what's the difference? A proposal often is one of the steps taken that leads to a contract. It contains the offer that is necessary for a contract to exist. One party offers or proposes to do something that the other party needs or wants. It is really selling our professional services. A proposal can become a contract if the other party agrees to and accepts the proposal in its entirety, as long as the terms and conditions or other necessary exhibits are attached and referenced. A contract must contain 4 elements to be legally enforceable: an offer, consideration, acceptance of the offer, and mutual agreement by the parties involved. A proposal is simply an offer designed by one party and offered to another to provide a service, in the case of this, such as design services. On those merits alone, a proposal is not enforceable in the way a contract is. Whatever you decide to use, it would be wise to review your agreement with a lawyer having expertise in the AEC industry. I have seen and used proposals that have integrated terms and conditions. These can sometimes turn into a 10 to 20-page proposal. And I have seen short and simple proposals with an attached Exhibit A covering the terms and conditions that list all your standard clauses. So most clients are comfortable with a short proposal and a terms and conditions exhibit. You can have multiple proposal templates and just one terms and conditions exhibit. This makes modifying your template a lot easier. If you use the AB 105, then a proposal can be referenced as Exhibit A. For the long form B101, it's best to incorporate your proposal language and modify any language in the AIA agreement if necessary. If the client has a lawyer, it's typically only the terms and conditions that need to be negotiated. So for over 20 years, I've worked with an amazing E&O broker, John Feeney. He works with many small design firms and goes above and beyond in helping firms with contract review and developing a terms and condition exhibit that protects you and is in alignment with your E&O insurance policy. Your broker really should be of service to you to really make sure your terms and conditions are in alignment with your policy. So the terms and conditions document typically covers everything that does not change and is supplemental to your proposal. What is shown here was prepared by John Feeney. I'm sure many of you already have a version of this in place that you can modify and add any new clauses might be appropriate. While many firms use the standard AIA, AIA contracts, which we'll have a short review in a few slides, some of the smaller firms like generating their own proposal and agreement. The takeaway is to be organized with your terms and conditions information. Don't just have a running list of 1 to 100 of clauses, but group the information under big bucket headings. It's up to you and your lawyer to determine what is in or out of your terms and conditions. While this document from John Feeney has a very technical look to it, many firms take this into Word and make the graphic fit their proposal format. I prefer more white space with a different font, but I'll leave the graphics to all of you. I care more about the content and setting up a system, process, and template so this task is done once and updated only when you need to add a clause. In any event, it's a good idea to read and edit this once a year so you maintain familiarity with this document. So there's a 6-page version and a 16-page version. So for time's sake, we'll just look at the 6-page version from John Feeney in detail. I won't read all of this, but just go over the highlights. Once again, reach out to John Feeney directly if you're interested in E&O quote from him, and then he'll service you in giving you this information. Part 1 is additional definitions, are just stating what are the construction documents and instruments of service. It's not just the drawings, but all the associated supporting documents such as soils reports, specifications, addenda, etc. Part 2 is the design professional's responsibility. This is similar to the AIB series agreement and states the meaning of our contractual obligations. Part 3 is the client's responsibility, same comment as previous. A side note, to make sure you are consistent in names such as client versus owner. In small single-family residential work, you'll usually be working with the owner, but in other project sectors, this is not always the case. For large corporate projects, it's more appropriate to use the term client as there might not be a single owner. For tenant improvements, it gets confusing, as the landlord is considered the owner while the tenant is your client. Bottom line, it's important to stay consistent between your proposal and your terms and conditions. Part 4 is ownership and use of documents and data. This is a whole topic in itself. While the AIA agreement states the architect has copyright and ownership of the documents and the client is paying for use of the documents, we've had many clients that would not back down on this, and we had to strike this clause. It's up to you to give this up. It's better to strike the clause versus rewriting it in the client's favor. You can speak to your E&O person on that. Part 5, risk allocation, covers liability, indemnity, and some other clauses. 3 options presented in this document. It's pending if your office is out of California, in California, and whether you're licensed or non-licensed. Indemnity is different pending state law, so confirm with a local real estate attorney to make sure you're using the correct wording. Part 5 continues with other clauses that defines areas where the client might come back to you claiming your firm is liable when it is not industry standard to accept such risks. Just to note, to define standard of care. I've done some expert witness work where most of the issues come down to, did the architect meet standard of care? So the AIA defines this as, the architect shall perform its services consistent with the professional skill and care ordinarily provided by architects practicing in the same or similar locality under the same or similar circumstances. The architect shall perform its services as expeditiously as consistent with such professional skill and care and the orderly progress of the project. So that's your standard of care. Part 6 describes all the different types of business insurance you have in place and will maintain for the duration of the project. Sometimes clients ask for a 10-year tail from substantial completion, but most don't. There is owner-promoted policies that can cover a 10-year tail if the client wants to purchase it. Part 7 is dispute resolution, is selecting whether you're choosing arbitration versus mediation when an issue arises. Part 8 is general provisions, which covers the remaining items to the agreement, such as suspension, termination, severability, advertising, etc. And last, make this graphically beautiful. What I'm showing here is direct from John Feeney and just very technical from a Word document. So, are we on time? Let me try to wrap this up. The AIA has spent a lot of time, money, and energy developing a series of agreements. You can look at them up at aia.org. The A series are mainly the owner-contractor agreements that define the relationship of the owner and the builder, whether contractor, design, build, construction manager, with different versions for various types of agreements. The B series are the owner-architect agreements with various versions for project size, sector, other variables. So we'll discuss a few of these today. The C series are other agreements, mainly for consulting agreements. The D series are miscellaneous documents, such as the project checklist. The E series is for exhibits. The G series are for construction administration and project management forms. So there are currently 37 B series agreements for various owner-architect relationships. So let's just focus on a few. Out of the 37 possible AIA owner-architects agreements, we're going to focus on the 101, 105, 109, and the new 110. For our larger projects, we choose to use an AI agreement to go with our contract. Our go-to contract was the B101. We found most of our developer clients and corporate clients favored a modified version of this agreement. We would sometimes add an exhibit that included a list of deliverables. This agreement starts at 23 pages and can extend a few more pending how much additional information is added by you. For most of our small and medium projects, we would use the AIA B105. This is the shortest of all the agreements at 3 pages that defines 6 articles, each only 1 or 2 paragraphs, plus other provisions. The architect's responsibilities, owner responsibilities, use of documents, termination, miscellaneous payments, other. Under other provisions, I would just attach our proposal as Exhibit A and our terms and conditions as Exhibit B, making sure we're not overlapping with information. So the AIA has created many proposals for project sector-specific use. For example, the B109 is focused on multifamily mixed-use residential with a clear exception for condominium projects. The B110 is focused on custom residential projects. So this is a 21-page agreement that asks you to define the project program and cost of work as part of the agreement. As I mentioned before, there's an opportunity to start selling a pre-designed service to define this information, as many first-time clients do not have a clear idea of the project in the beginning. They might know the rooms, but they surely won't know the room sizes, and they can't fit all those rooms into a 2,500 square foot house, or we would discuss the problem of a big, small house with lots of tiny rooms with an overall large square footage. Similar in the budget, they might have heard friends saying they can build for X, but I have found not all friends share the true cost of their project. So discuss types of contractors, quality of contractors, what is the headache factor and associated time factor of using a lowball contractor? Use the pre-design phase as an opportunity for the client to experience what it's like working with you. Sell the experience. It's up to you to have them fall in love with your process, so they want to continue on their journey with you. Coming back to the proposal and fee, the concept is to link the proposal scope and fee back into your firm management software. On the left is the free fee breakdown in your project. The client has the option of choosing what scope they want included and understanding the value of that scope. On the right side is how you would set up the project in Core or in any other firm management software. In Core, confirm whether you're using standard or main phasing in the project setup. The phase and scope of your fee must align with your invoicing. Here is an example from BQE Core of how to set this up and what it can look like. The previous webinar discussing project fee estimator is where you start to understand your fee, and then you can put that you can input that information into your proposal and into your firm project management software. The most effective way to do this is to set up a template project and add as much information as you can of what doesn't change. Also note, it's easier to delete a phase or two than to add a phase or two for every new project. Oh, perfect, within a minute. So that was a lot in 50 minutes. Takeaways. Try a pre-design agreement to build a relationship with the client. Create templates for your proposals. Constantly update your terms and conditions until they are rock solid. Be prepared to use the right AI agreement if required by your client, and link your proposal to your project setup. So there's a lot of resources on my website. You can go to www.douglasteager.com. I have a lot of these templates that you can purchase and download. I offer a monthly best practice mastermind. If you'd like to join, you can sign up on my website. If you want to reach out to Blue Turtle or John Feeney, their information is here. And we'll move into Q&A. So do you want to launch the poll? I'll stop share. And I'll put on the video if I can find that. Is someone... Yeah, someone said, yay, John Feeney, hope he doesn't retire. Okay, here's the BQE poll question. So if you're using a firm management software, just get a demo from Core, see what it can do compared to what you're currently using. There's a dozen programs out there that all do similar things, some better, some worse. If you are not using a firm management software, then get a demo from 3 or 4 of these companies and see the differences of what they provide. The Core demo, these programs are so sophisticated that you can't download a trial version and figure it out on your own. Have the demo to explain what the potential is for this software program. It's so deep and so in-depth. I am a great user. I'm not a master user. There's always something to learn. So if you're researching, whether it's Core, Harvest, Monograph, get demos, see what they can do. If you're currently using Core, I would still get a demo. I would still sign up, get a demo, and make sure you're using the features that are available. And through the demo, you might learn something that you haven't been using. So I would definitely just get the demo. If you haven't been using it and you're investigating it, get the demo. Courtney, I'm going to have you jump to the questions, and I'm going to...
Yeah, thank you so much, Douglas. That was great. And thank you for all of those who've sent in questions in the Q&A or in the chat. I've been keeping track of that for you, and we do have a good amount, so we'll jump right in. The first question that came through asks, how much of your proposal should include information about your company to build credibility and demonstrate expertise, such as company history, size, team, resume, project portfolio, etc.?
So that's really more of an RFQ, request for qualifications. So you might want to have a qualifications package separate from your proposal, and that's really your firm bio. So that's up to you. The proposal, that would make the proposal so long. I know there are some firms that combine those. I'll leave that. Once again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying if it's working, keep it. If it's not working, try something new. So if having that packaged as one proposal is working for you, great. If it's not, maybe try breaking it up. And then you could really have them focus on what your firm is and then what the proposal is. So there's never one way to do anything. There's never one right way. It's really what is right for your process, your system, your style. And I've seen both be effective.
Great. All right. Next question is, if a client asks for a rough number before proposal and client is not sure of what they were planning to do, adding building component or replace it, or not adding it, how do we estimate the fee? This client has a history of change ideas, a history to change their ideas multiple times during the drawing process. Yeah.
So I use the car industry, and are they buying a Kia, a Ford, a Audi, BMW, Ferrari, Bentley, Lamborghini? Tell them, listen, it can go from 300 to 3,000 a foot. I need to know more information. So we really have to dive into this. Why don't we do a preliminary investigation? And I can do some code research. I can do some cost research. We can meet. I can understand the quality level that you're looking in these materials. I mean, windows can range from 80,000 to $1 million. I had one house, that 7,000 square foot house, 80,000 for low end windows, $1 million for high end windows. So the numbers are crazy. So let's get to know each other. Let's just work on an hourly agreement. It should be about 30 hours, and we'll get a lot of this information resolved. That's how I would approach it.
Great, thank you. This person asks, can you explain the term work earned in your billing section?
Yes, great question. Okay, so work earned is in January, you spent 100 billable hours on projects. At the end of the month, you billed only 70 of those hours. So there's a 30-hour discrepancy. So work earned means you're billing for whatever you're billing in that month. Milestone means you're billing when you're done with schematic design, or you're billing when you're done getting a permit. You're not billing for the work earned in the month you generated it. So the work that you're billing in January, let the hours that you worked in January, you're billing in January, whether it's all of them or a portion of them. The difference between what you've worked and what you billed is your realization rate. And understanding your realization rate, which is different than your utilization rate. So if there's 172 hours in a month, if you're the partner, maybe you're working half of that. Let's make it 200 so I can do easy math. 50% is utilization. So your utilization will be 50%, meaning of 200 hours, 100 is billable, 100 is non-billable, doing all your marketing, admin, selling, business development, etc. Of the 100 hours that you did work on a project, you were only able to bill 70 of those hours. So you have a 70% realization. My goal is to get you to a 90% realization. And then at the end of January, that you're going to bill in February 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. I really wanted you to bill in that first month. I would date your invoice January 31st. So the work that you did in January is invoiced with the date of January. Your clients might say, hey, I didn't get the invoice till the second week of February. You say, listen, my software, that's just how I have to do it. Don't worry, you have 30 days from when you received it. But I like to very clearly see the effort in January is what's billed in January, and you track it by your invoice being the last date of the month.
Great, thank you. Nana asks, what is the difference between additional service and exclusions?
Sure. Exclusions is clearly what's not included in your scope of work. So some are obvious, some might not be obvious. Try to do the ones that are not obvious and just put them in there. I'd err on the side of safety. Exclusions are what's not part of your scope of work. If you want to do them, you can be paid for them. But it's just saying this is not part of my base service. And then if the client wants you to do those, then it would be an additional service.
Great, thanks. Jamie asks, what resources do you reference to generate design fees, ROMs, cost /SF, maybe Salesforce?
So costs, what's that means? There are some companies that put out costs per square foot, per location, per sector. And Means, I thought, was one of them. I haven't used it in a while. Means construction data is one area. But more importantly, you should be networking with contractors, builders to know, hey, what are you building for these days? And just have that be part of your knowledge base. Just ask. Go around. I used to walk into houses under construction, talk to the contractor, and just say, hey, out of curiosity, what are you building per square foot? And just have an understanding of what it is. Once again, gamify all of this. Make it fun. Make it an exploration. Make it a learning. You're just trying to get as much knowledge as you can. And I always talk about having as many data points as I can. And just having that knowledge is data points. It's having you know that this type of house built in this year with this level of quality is costing about X.
Interesting, great advice. Alexis asks, do you recommend any specific clauses related to suddenly canceled or paused project by the client?
Yeah, there is a suspension clause that's part of the AA agreement. You can use that as a starting point for some language. But I typically say if projects are paused over 3 months, there's a restart fee because you have to reassign your staff. You're losing your head's not in it. You have to get back into it. There's a cost to it. I don't think I've ever charged it in reality. We've had projects put on hold and we just picked it up. But if you have it in the contract, it is possible for you to charge something for that.
Great.
Once again, it's reading all of this, especially additional services or these added costs, is your ability to understand the client and use language that makes the client feel at ease and willing to say yes. So I never want to say, hey, here are the additional services. I would say, you asked if I could do this. I would love to. It's going to be about 10 hours or this amount. And then it shows up on the invoice in an additional service. But as you're talking to the client, try to show the value that you're bringing to the project and the service that the client is asking you to provide.
Great, thank you. We do have a few more questions, Douglas. I'll send those over to you. But I do notice we're at the top of the hour. So I think
it goes fast.
Turn things back over to Ashley.
All right. Well, I would love to give a big thank you to Douglas for this wonderful and informative presentation. It really was fantastic. As for attendees, if you made it this far, AI California staff will submit you for AIA CE credit. Learning units should appear on your transcripts within a few weeks.
I still need one of those, so put my name on it.
Sounds good. More details about our upcoming webinars and how to register will be available to you in a follow-up email. And as always, additional resources and tools can be found on the AI California website.
And if
Thank
you're
you
interested in a demo, just reach out to Courtney or to Core, BQE Core, and you'll get it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All
Bye,
right. Well,
guys.
thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.